Well, welcome back for Exodus chapter 28. We are going to have some fun with this one, learn some really interesting things that actually apply to our day and age. So the next couple chapters have some nuggets in it for us in our modern day to explain some things a little bit. So in this chapter, Aaron and his sons are to be consecrated and anointed to minister in the priest's office. Aaron's garments are to include a breastplate, an ephod, a robe, a coat, a mitre, and a girdle. The breastplate of judgment is to contain 12 precious stones in the names of the tribes of Israel thereon. The Urim and Thummim are to be carried in the breastplate. So really cool stuff. All right, verse 1, and take thou unto thee Aaron thy brother, and his sons with him from among the children of Israel, that he may minister unto me in the priest's office, even Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar, Aaron's sons. So these are Aaron's literal sons, basically, and a lot of them, their names are in the Bible dictionary. You can look them up to learn more. So they're being called as priests. So that's a office in the priesthood where they are going to be officiating and administering the ordinances and the laws and everything else. So Moses is the high priest. So he's kind of over all the priests basically. So this is a different calling than what Moses has in the priesthood. Verse 2, thou shalt make holy garments for Aaron thy brother, for glory and for beauty. So there's special garments that are going to be made partially for glory, to talk about glorifying God, preparing their minds and for administering in the priesthood, as well as beauty, something that looks good, that not something that's like just haphazardly put together kind of a thing. Verse 3, thou shalt speak unto all that are wise-hearted, whom I have filled with the spirit of wisdom, that they may make Aaron's garments to consecrate him, that they may minister unto me in the priest's office. So we learn that the Lord has actually inspired some people to help in putting these together. That could be people who know how to sew, make fabrics. That could be people who do metal work, other things like that as well. So there's people who have been given a talent, a spiritual gift, if you will. And so Moses is to call upon these people to gather them together so that they can put this together. So God has prepared the people to accomplish what he wants them to accomplish. Verse 4, this is where we get into more about what are some of these specifics. So, and these are the garments which they shall make: a breastplate, an ephod, a robe, and a broidered coat, a mitre, and a girdle. They shall make holy garments for Aaron thy brother and his sons, that he may minister unto me in the priest's office. So this gives you an idea. So the mitre, if you look over the Hebrew word, is actually turban or bound cap, is what that is basically. So here's something that's interesting that Hugh Nibley says about this high priest breastplate that he's going to have. Basically, before we get into, I want to read this before we get into describing in the details of what is on all this. Hugh Nibley said this: Philo, who was an early writer of Christianity and things and philosophy, Philo has described the garment of the high priest. Quote, on the collar stones were fitted in, two being costly emeralds of exceeding value, on which the names of the patriarchs of the tribes were engraved, 6 on each, making 12 in all. On the breastplate are 12 other precious stones of different colors, resembling seals, 4 rows of 3 each. Philo tells us that the garment of the high priest is a representation of the heavens. The 2 great emeralds represented the hemispheres, the one above the earth and the other below it. The 12 precious stones in 4 by 3 rows are representations of the Zodiac. The whole arrangement is called logeion. All the heavenly bodies are arranged according to reason and analogy, and there is nothing illogical about it. Now, one must grant the prophet Joseph true insight into this mode of thinking in reading in Facsimile number 2. So this goes back to the book of Abraham. Facsimile number 2 is the hypocephalus, the round one that we have. So you can go look up our videos and research on those. As Edwin R. Goodenough explains it, the breastplate is double. For both in the universe and in man, the logos is double. There is one logos which has to do with the immaterial and prototypal forms, and also the logos which has to do with visible things which are imitation and likeness of those forms. This full array of symbols qualifies the high priest to enter the Holy of Holies, and he ought to try unceasingly to be worthy of the cosmos, to become one who bears in mind the original pattern, so that he becomes, if one may say so, himself a little cosmos. The dress of the high priest is then a copy of the universe. The stones vary in their numbers and functions, but all perform the same theater. In the book of breathings, the initiate is told, "May you enter into the hall of the two truths, having been purified from every sin and misdeed. Stone of truth, or mat, is your name." In John 1:42, the Joseph Smith translation, Christ tells Peter, "Thou shalt be called Cephas," which is by interpretation a seer or a stone. Not only discernment, but knowledge is the gift of the stone on the right side. Consider the tablet bound in mother of pearl, with its two covers of red sapphire suspended between heaven and earth, which showed everything occurring here below. Ibn Abbas reports that God consults the tablet 360 times a day, and by it creates and sustains life. The first thing God created was a pen which reaches like a laser beam from heaven to earth. So some interesting ideas that people have looked at, that after these holy garments were made, and people who have seen some of these or later versions of these garments have talked about these in ancient antiquity, that they're very symbolic of heaven and earth, of the 12 tribes, or as Philo believes, the 12 zodiac signs, which probably originate from understanding the 12 tribes of Israel and trying to identify which tribe are you a part of. Most likely, there's probably some connections in there, maybe. But a lot of symbolism in this. This is something that's important for us to understand. So let's look at the description that it gives us here about these. Verse 5, "They shall take gold and blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen. They shall make the ephod of gold, of blue, of purple, of scarlet, and of fine twined linen with cunning work," which you can look up ephod in the Bible dictionary. "It shall have the two shoulder pieces thereof joined at the two edges thereof, and so it shall be joined together." So the shoulder pieces are going to be connected, basically, and then there's a breastplate that's going to be all connected to it as well. Verse 8, "And the curious girdle of the ephod, which is upon it, shall be of the same according to the work thereof, even of gold, of blue, of purple, scarlet, and fine twined linen." So this is actually, I misspoke a second ago, we're not talking about the breastplate yet. We're talking about the garments underneath the breastplate, the clothes, the robes that are going to be here. Let's see, verse 9, "Thou shalt take two onyx stones and grave on them the names of the children of Israel." So that's part of what Philo had described, as these were more up on the shoulders. 6 of their names on one stone, 6 other names of the rest on the other stone, according to their birth. "With the work of an engraver in stone, like the engravings of a signet, thou shalt engrave the two stones with the names of the children of Israel. Thou shalt make them to be set in ouches of gold." So some fun things that we learn and understand about how this was put together. Verse 12, "Thou shalt put the two stones upon the shoulders of the ephod for stones of memorial unto the children of Israel. And Aaron shall bear their names before the Lord upon his two shoulders for a memorial." So it's to help remember the children of Israel, basically. These stones are put up here. Verse 13, "Thou shalt make ouches of gold, and two chains of pure gold at the ends of wreathen work. Shalt thou make them, and fasten the wreathen chains to the ouches. Thou shalt make the breastplate of judgment with cunning work after the work of the ephod. Thou shalt make it of gold, of blue, of purple, of scarlet, and of fine twined linen. Thou shalt make it. Foursquare it shall be, being doubled. A span shall be the length thereof, and a span shall be the breadth thereof. Thou shalt set it in its settings of stones, even 4 rows of stones. And the first row shall be a sardius, a topaz, and a carbuncle. This shall be the first row. So he's actually saying these are the stones you're going to do in the breastplate. Basically, it's going to sit in front, and these are the stones that you're going to do on this row. In the second row, verse 18, the second row shall be an emerald, a sapphire, and a diamond. The third row, a liger, an agate, and an amethyst. The fourth row, a beryl, an onyx, and a jasper. They shall be set in gold in their enclosings. So this is describing basically the different stones as they're going across. Verse 21, and the stone shall be with the names of the children of Israel, 12, according to the names, like the engravings of a signet. Everyone his name shall be according to the 12 tribes. And thou shalt make upon the breastplate chains at the ends of the wreathen work of pure gold. Excuse me, a little bit of allergies. So there's the breastplate that's going to be there, and then there's going to be some chains that come off of them to help support it and hold it up. And then there's going to be the 12 jewels on there, and then they're going to have a name of each of the tribes of Israel in them. This is where all this is coming together, basically, being put together. Let's see. Verse 23, thou shalt make the breastplate, upon the breastplate, 2 rings of gold, and shalt put the 2 rings on the 2 ends of the breastplate. Thou shalt put the 2 wreathen chains of gold into the rings which are on the ends of the breastplate. So it's going to have these rings on it, and then you're going to run the chain through it, basically. Verse 25, and the other 2 ends of the wreathen chains thou shalt fasten in the 2 ouches and put them on the shoulder pieces of the ephod before it. So this sits on the ephod that's going to be more on the shoulders, basically. And so the chains come up and connect into that and are suspended below the ephod, basically. Verse 26, thou shalt make 2 rings of gold, and thou shalt put them upon the 2 ends of the breastplate in the order thereof, which is in the side of the ephod inward. And 2 other rings of gold thou shalt make, and shalt put them on the 2 sides of the ephod underneath, toward the forepart thereof, over against the other coupling thereof, above the curious girdle of the ephod. And they shall bind the breastplate by the rings thereof unto the rings of the ephod with a lace of blue, that it may be above the curious girdle of the ephod, and shall that the breastplate be not loosed from the ephod. And Aaron shall bear the names of the children of Israel in the breastplate of judgment upon his heart, and he goeth in unto the holy place for a memorial before the Lord continually. So they're putting this together as a way to remember all the children of Israel, and to realize that when Aaron's going in to the holy place, he is representing all of the children of Israel as he goes in there. So he's carrying a symbol of all of them with him as he goes in to represent them before the Lord, basically. Verse 30, and thou shalt put in the breastplate of judgment the Urim and Thummim, and they shall be upon Aaron's heart when he goeth in before the Lord. And Aaron shall bear the judgment of the children of Israel upon his heart before the Lord continually. So as they're putting this together, they have the breastplate, and then coming off the breastplate is where the Urim and Thummim is going to go. The Urim and Thummim is a specific type of device that was used to divine things, basically. 2 stones would fit into these little bows that would kind of stick out from the breastplate, and then they could kind of look down through them, kind of like having these little spectacles that were suspended from a breastplate. And then you could look through them, and then you could gain wisdom. You could ask the God questions and look through there and get answers and things. It was a way of utilizing a way of revelation, basically. And so this is something that's fascinating for us in our day and age, because we've talked about the Urim and Thummim with Joseph Smith and the translation of the plates and other things. There's not a lot of evidence that shows that Joseph necessarily used the Urim and Thummim a lot, but there was one with him when he picked up the plates in the stone box. There's also talk of a Urim and Thummim in the Book of Mormon that was used by the great King Mosiah in translating the Jaredite plates and pulling that together. So he had a gift of translation and this tool to help him out. Was all that the same Urim Thummim that Moses built? We don't know for sure. Probably not. The one that the Book of Mormon had, they probably made, that was a copy, a replica of what was put together here by Moses. It could be the same, but it's most likely a copy of it, not the original. But that's a discussion that has not been resolved completely as far as I know, basically. So when they talk about some of these rings, there's a chain that they're using to connect all this, but there's the other one that talk about rings upon rings. That's kind of like a chain mail that sits on it as well. So there's a couple distinctions that are made in there, basically. Let's see, and verse 31, thou shalt make the robe of the ephod olive blue. So the robe underneath the ephod is going to be blue. There shall be an hole in the top of it, in the midst thereof. It shall have a binding woven work around the whole of it, as it were the whole of an habergeon, that it be not rent. Basically, so that's an opening for the head that'll go through, and then like a coat of mail. So a lot of ringlets put together to kind of a chainmail type idea. And beneath, this is verse 33, and beneath upon the hem of it thou shalt make pomegranates of blue and of purple and of scarlet, round about the hem thereof, the bells of gold between them and about. A golden bell and a pomegranate, a golden bell and a pomegranate upon the hem of the robe round about. So they're going to alternate these golden bell and a pomegranate all the way around the edge of it. Verse 35, it shall be upon Aaron to minister, and his sound shall be heard when he goeth in unto the holy place before the Lord, and when he cometh out, that he die not. So because of all this stuff, they'll hear him coming and leaving from there. They'll know what's going on, so he doesn't spend too much time in there. But again, he is representing all the children of Israel before the Lord. So it's a kind of in that day, their religion was more collective, if you will. So they didn't do things as much individually as they did collectively together, basically. Today, we're a little bit more individual in our ordinance work and things. Back then, though, they were more collective in how they did things. Because the people weren't ready to learn more, weren't ready to do more, and so they had somebody work in proxy to them. So rather than, like in our day and age, we have proxy ordinance work for people who are dead. That's baptisms for the dead and ordinances for the dead and things like that. Back then, it was living proxy, basically. Aaron and the priests were a living proxy for the rest of the children of Israel. So the concept of proxy work for ordinances is not a new one. It's very ancient because of this. Let's see, verse 36, thou shalt make a plate of pure gold and grave upon it, like the engravings of a signet, holiness to the Lord. So they're making a plate that's going to be all gold, just a gold plate, that are going to have the words holiness to the Lord on it. Verse 37, and thou shalt put it on a blue lace, that it may be upon the mitre, upon the forefront of the mitre it shall be, and it shall be upon Aaron's forehead. So remember, the mitre is the turban or the wrapped cap, and they're going to put this up here, so it'll say holiness before the Lord, basically right here. That Aaron may bear the iniquity of the holy things, which the children of Israel shall hallow in all their holy gifts, and it shall be always upon his forehead, that they may be accepted before the Lord. So again, a reminder of the importance of holiness before the Lord, being holy and before the Lord and respecting him. And it's there kind of like a representation of the atonement, that Aaron is being a proxy for everybody else to deal with their sins. That's basically a symbol of what Savior is going to do for them, basically, in the future. Verse 39, and thou shalt embroider the coat of fine linen, and thou shalt make the mitre of fine linen. Thou shalt make the girdle of needlework, and for Aaron's sons thou shalt make coats. And thou shalt make for them girdles and bonnets, and thou shalt make for them for glory and for beauty. And thou shalt put them upon Aaron thy brother and his sons with him, and thou shalt anoint them and consecrate them and sanctify them, that they may minister unto me in the priest's office. And if that verse sounds familiar, it should. For anybody who's been to the temple, it should sound familiar. If you know where that comes from, let me know. It's not the exact quote that is used in that we use today. That's Exodus 40, I believe. That's actually where that one is. But this is the same concept that's talked about. All right, verse 42, thou shalt make them linen breeches to cover their nakedness, from the loins even unto the thighs they shall reach. They shall be upon Aaron and upon his sons when they come in unto the tabernacle of the congregation, or when they come near unto the altar to minister in the holy place, that they bear not iniquity and die. It shall be a statute ever unto him and his seed after him. So we've got two types of clothes that they've talked about. There's a garment that's kind of covering their nakedness, kind of like an undergarment, if you will, that the Aaron and his sons, these priests, are going to wear when they're officiating in the tabernacle of the congregation. Now remember, that is the outer court of the temple. So when you have the outer walls of the temple, and when you walk inside those outer walls, you're in a large open space. That is the tabernacle of the congregation. In that space, there's an altar, there's a laver, there's a few other things in there, and then there's the smaller tabernacle, which is the holy place, basically. And that's the place that Aaron puts the ephod on, the breastplate, the urim and thummim. He gets more dressed up, and then he goes in there to represent all of Israel before the Lord. And that's where he goes into the holy place to administer in there, which is the holiest plus the most holy place is partitioned in that tabernacle as well. So that hopefully that helps understand a little bit more about how this is laid out and what's going on. So the concept of having sacred clothing to administer in ordinances is not a new one. We can look at a lot of things in antiquity to see this. A lot of some religions, more Catholic and more spin-off of Catholic groups like Greek Orthodox and Russian Orthodox and those ones, they use a lot of ritual in their religion, and they use a lot of special robes when officiating. So when the Pope is officiating, when the priests and the cardinals are officiating, they're wearing certain robes that have jewels and gems all over in them and all kinds of design as part of their sacred priesthood robes. Even in what we call a more normal Catholic situation, there are priesthood robes that the priests wear. That's the collar, black shirt with the collar that has the little white piece in it, kind of showing the symbol of the priest. Women who join into the convents where become nuns, they have the special robes that they wear as a symbol of their devotion and commitment to God and their religion. Sometimes religions have these ideas. So in the LDS tradition, we have the concept of garments. They're underwear, if you will, in today's vernacular, but they're seen as holy and sacred, and they are representations of covenants that we have made, and they are there to help us. And so we wear them all the time. But it goes back to a lot of these same ideas that originate from the temple in Moses' time, of they're symbolic of commitments we have made and opportunities for us to remind us of what we have said we are going to do, and to help us to be thinking about the commandments and what we're supposed to be doing. And then there's garments that we use when we go into a temple that's different, a different set of things that we change out of our street clothes into these special garments, or special clothes, I should say, to officiate or administer and stuff inside the temple. So those are the robes of the holy priesthood, is how we call those. But again, it comes back from a lot of these teachings in Moses. So here's something that's important for us to look at is while the LDS Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, while we are considered Christian, we consider ourselves Christian just like any other Christian church would today, we have to realize that in a way, actually, we are more Old Testament than New Testament, in the sense that our religion not only embraces what we would call Christianity, believing in Christ, the atonement, the sacrifice of Christ, what he's done for us, he pays for our sins, those things which are more New Testament teachings. But we also embrace the religion of the Old Testament, which you'll see more ritualistic ideas in Old Testament philosophies of Islam, of Jewish traditions, and other things like that. So the LDS philosophy is equally Old Testament as it is New Testament. And in a way, we almost have more in common with religions that originate more from Old Testament times than we do traditional or modern Christianity. Because most of modern Christianity has gone away from almost everything in the Old Testament. They don't have sacred garments. They don't have robes. They don't have temples. They don't have prophets. They don't have a lot of these things that were extremely common through the Old Testament. So it's one thing that makes us a little different from modern Christianity is that we still believe the Old Testament is important. It is still a book of God, and we still follow it. So this is one of the things I think a lot of people get hung up on when they go to the temple, because when you look at the teachings of the church, uh, initially as you're going through missionary discussions and learning and understanding the gospel better, most of that is more centered on concepts around New Testament ideas, dealing with the teachings of Christ and what he has taught us and he has done, which is fine. I think that's the main important point that we need to be understanding in our day and age, is what Christ has done for us and how we can make commitments to him that allow his atonement to work more in our life. That's baptism and repenting and those kinds of things. Those are great, but then sometimes people, when they go to the temple, they get confused. They're like, wait, this doesn't feel the same as the church that I have grown up with. And it's not that they're different religions or philosophies. They're actually the same. What the temple is teaching us is combining a more full understanding of the gospel. So rather than just focus on New Testament, it actually says, here is more. Let's combine all of it together. Old Testament, New Testament, all of it comes together so that we can make it all work and fit together as one piece, not two separate things, but one whole piece. So that's something that's important to think about if you are considering going to the temple, or have been, but maybe haven't been for a while because maybe it was kind of a weird situation or experience. That what happens in the temple is definitely more related to Old Testament stuff. The beauty is really a true religion shouldn't isolate people out that have a different culture. It should be able to absorb other cultures and complement things. So finding truth in any ancient culture and being able to expound and build upon that. So it should encompass all philosophies and cultures to an extent. At least the truth in each philosophy and culture should be able to come together and be added upon. And then anything that's the philosophies of men or falsehoods in those traditions can then be pushed to the side, and we get a more perfect understanding. So the LDS faith does this. A lot of our temple ceremonies, religious ideas actually do come from, we embrace the Old Testament just as much as we embrace the New Testament. So thanks for watching this. If you have any comments or thoughts on what we've talked about, put them in the comments. We'd love to hear opinions and ideas of you, as well as we're going to talk more about some things in the next chapter that still relate to our day and age also. Thanks.